Welcome into the Carr Sports Free Agency Prediction. Today, if you look down at the bullpen, we'll be talking about free agency previews. We'll be talking about Carr's my top 10 list for these free agents. I do have an honorable mention that I am throwing in here. And then we're going to have a couple landing spots. And then I think we'll dip into trade chips when we do our full multi-sport breakdown next week. So getting into it, our first free agent is Jurickson Profar. He is our honorable mention, right? He had a great year. He's a former top prospect. He finally figured it out. It's been a long road here since he was in the Little League World Series. We've seen how great he's been. But he never really figured out in the major league level until last year when he was a huge piece for this Padres lineup. So obviously, right, the Padres are going to want him back, right? The Padres, there's going to be a market there, right? Is he going to be expensive? Is it going to be many years to it? I don't think so, and I think that benefits the Padres just because of how much money they already have committed around the rest of the team, especially in that offense when you look at the contracts Machado, Tatis, Bogarts have. They want to bring back someone, and he's a veteran guy that, based on how he's had one really good season, he does have like the history of being a top prospect, so they always get chances. But it's a cheaper, low-key deal that could pay dividends again like it did this year. Then when we look at another team that's kind of in the same position, right? They're a smaller market team. They want to spend, and I'm linking my Cincinnati Reds to them. Nick Kroll has already said that he wants to go out and he wants to get another corner outfielder. What is Profar? Corner outfielder. It brings in a little bit of a more dynamic bat to that offense, another switch hitter. It just makes the lineup a whole lot deeper again for a Reds team that we saw struggled with depth because of how many injuries they had this year. And then another team that you can't look away from, New York Yankees. And why New York Yankees? Well, Soto might be leaving. There's no guarantee Soto comes back. And let's say for some reason they're waiting on Soto and guys like Teoscar or Santander are gone. You can flip to Profar and you have obviously it's going to be a downgrade, but you're replacing a former Padres outfielder with a current Padres outfielder, and you won't be like having to go scrape the bargain bin for another outfielder. Now in the end, when I look at teams and fits, I feel like the Padres have to be the runaway favorite for this. Keeping it in town, I think it's personally going to be a 2-year deal, maybe with a club option at the end, where it's not crazy expensive. Maybe in the second year it's really gets bigger, where there's an opt-out where he can hit free agency again, and then there's a club option for a third year. That's my pick for Profar. Now, here's the one that I have a few concerns with, and it's going to be Christian Walker. When I look at Christian Walker, right, he's a veteran first baseman. Does that normally draw teams away? Yes, but yet again, we saw what Edwin Encarnacion Edwin Encarnacion, not Encarnacion Strand, mixing former Reds names together there with a current and now retired one. When we're looking at teams that need first base help, and just pop in general, we're going to have to look at the Mariners. Mariners don't really have a first baseman. They don't really have a DH either because Mitch Garver's been really bad. Christian Walker would add immediate thump to this lineup. They were linked to Vladimir Guerrero during the trade deadline. It's like, well, that's never really going to happen because they're going to have to give up so much. Mariners are going to be looking for a bat, a power bat at that, to add to this team. Another team, right, you can't look past them because it'd be bringing them right back home, the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks would love to bring him back. He's beloved in that clubhouse. It just makes a really good fit. Another team that's a really good fit, and we kind of talked about trading their first baseman to one of the other teams here, it's the Blue Jays. And it's like, well, why would the Blue Jays be interested? It's like, well, they need another power bat in this lineup. When you look at the terms of like their power bats, Springer's old. They don't really have a DH. You could put Vladdy at DH. You can have Walker at first base. He's a really good fielding first baseman. One of the best in the league. Maybe you have faith in Vladdy because he's lost a lot of weight and he's kind of gotten more athletic, if you will. you plug him in at third. There's plenty of options you can do with bringing in a bat like this. That's why I think he's one of the favorites to bring him in. Another team, they bought big on a free agent first baseman a couple years ago, didn't really pan out, and it's been the Houston Astros. If the Astros don't bring back Bregman, I think the Astros could really, really be in on the Christian Walker sweepstakes. You're bringing in a power bat first baseman, a spot that you've had a hold there for a while, seems like. You just go out there, maybe you give him 3 years, 4 years, just because you're worried about his age. Give him some decent AAV in the first couple years. And I think you got yourself a really nice piece to plug into a World Series contending lineup right now. But if I'm going to go through all this, this team has been trying to spend money on big free agents for the past couple years now. I'm going with the Toronto Blue Jays. This just makes too much sense. They bought big on Springer a couple years ago. They're not really sure what's happening with him. You need another power bat in that lineup so you can complement Vladimir Guerrero, Bo Bichette. You've got to find a way to complement them, and this is a big step towards doing it. One of the top pitchers in free agency, and we kind of forget about how good he was because he didn't really, it just seems like he's gone under the radar. But Max Fried obviously he's a really good pitcher. That's why he's on this top list. But when you talk about top free agents, I feel like I hear Walker Buehler's name before I hear Max Fried. Max Fried's one of the rare Braves top prospects that succeed in their organization that they let walk. I think partially kind of because he doesn't want to be there. He is from California, so maybe he wants to go out to California. He grew up a Dodgers fan. Braves always want to bring back their homegrown talent. That's why I have the Braves. And then, like I said, he grew up a Dodgers fan. Maybe he wants to be in LA. Another team that we know they want to spend money. They have money to spend now. They tried spending money last year. Didn't really work out that well. And they might be losing their own really good lefty pitcher. It's the Giants. No intention of having all three graphics being the spelled out name teams. But it is kind of interesting how that falls. When I look at teams that need another starter, especially knowing that one of them is leaving in free agency, I look at the Dodgers. They don't need him. They don't need him at all. He'd be their 7th starting pitcher according to Fangraphs right now. Now, obviously, you probably shift one of them to the minors. Maybe one of them goes to the bullpen. Maybe you're done trying Dustin May as a starter. And that's also relying on Tony Gonsolin being healthy, right? So there's variables there, and you could go out and do that, but I don't think you need to go out and spend that much money on Max Fried to do that. I think you could go out and buy low on someone else. Saving money like the Dodgers have a money problem. But the Giants, right? They need another pitcher. They're losing Blake Snell. And I just don't think the Braves, if he didn't sign already, why would he sign now? That's kind of my, logic there. And so it's kind of obvious when it comes down to it. Give me the San Francisco Giants to bring in one of the better lefties in the league. Now on to Teo. Teo, he's linked to a bunch of teams. It was earlier stated today that the Red Sox were interested in him. That would be a really nice fit. Obviously, the Dodgers want to bring him back. He was great this year. The Baltimore Orioles, they were linked to him, which is interesting. And then a team that I want to see go after him is the Kansas City Royals. Kansas City Royals did a little bit of bargain buying on their outfield last year. They brought in Hunter Renfroe. Hunter Renfroe was not great. Their other corner outfielder, MJ Melendez, had a pretty okay postseason, but aside from that, their outfield isn't very good. In fact, I'd say, I'm not looking at the statistics, but I'd say it's probably a bottom 8 offensive outfield. Kyle Isbell is a great fielding center fielder. Just their 2 corner guys do not put up much offensively, which is why I think Teo would be great. He's going to give you at least 20 homers, at least, and that's if he's hurt for half the year, probably. He's a great bat. He provides more damage and fear, because when you looked at their lineup, it really went Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, and then Salvi. It kind of went 3 batters deep. It was okay, if you get the leadoff guy, you can intentionally walk the bases loaded and probably be safe, as long as you get the first out. Right? That is a very bold statement, but we didn't really see the back of that lineup do very much at all. But when we're talking about teams right? We always think that, well, a player, if they're leaving where they're coming from, they're familiar. And everyone likes familiarity, right? Change is scary, if I want to go out there and say that. It becomes a whole lot less scary when you're familiar with the place and you know they can open up the checking accounts. Los Angeles Dodgers might just be saying, hey, Teo, you had a great year and a great postseason. Let's run it back. We were kind of talking about this earlier when we talked about Max Fried, but here's the other big lefty. That's a photo when he no-hit my Cincinnati Reds. That was a fun game to watch. Not as a fan, but as a Reds fan, but a fan of the game. And when I'm kind of looking at it right, the Giants would love to bring him back. Now, there was talk that apparently he didn't make that last start because he was saving himself for free agency. And that didn't really go well with teams in the clubhouse, which kind of makes me think that they will be hesitant to go all out and just like, well, this guy just said that he wanted to go to free agency and wasn't pitched for us when our season's over. And maybe there's bad blood or something kind of cold towards each other and they don't want to bring him back. Maybe that's the case, maybe not. Which is another reason why I think that the Giants are going to have to go out and get someone else other than him, like Max Fried. Now, another team, they were linked to him last year, and it's kind of loose connection, but apparently it's still hot. New York Yankees. Now, when I look at the Yankees rotation, it's like, well, they don't really need anyone. I'm like, well, you have one more year of Marcus Stroman. What would hurt to bring in another dominant lefty? Like, has it ever been bad to run a six-man rotation? Now, would it be a lot of money in spots that they don't need? Absolutely, especially when they're battling for Soto. But if Soto leaves and they can't get one of those premier bats, what wins you World Series? Pitching and defense, which is what the Yankees didn't have. So, I have the Yankees on this list. The Chicago Cubs were apparently also linked to Blake Snell. Now, Blake Snell would be, I believe, their third lefty in their rotation, which, if be a traditionalist if you want and say, well, having too many lefties is bad. Well, when you have two really good lefties and one that's won multiple Cy Youngs, I kind of think that balances out. And another team that we know that likes to spend money, and they kind of did an interesting move, losing pitching depth, is the Los Angeles Angels. And when we've been looking at Blake Snell in his free agency kind of pass, he's been signing like that deal last year. If they didn't like him last year, I don't really know why they like him this year. And I get that he's trying to get more years and all that, trying to get a new contract. But I feel like the Angels would be the perfect team to do this with. Because the Angels, are they competing for nothing or anything? Probably not. Is there a chance you get traded mid-season if you go there? Possibly. Does it allow you to pitch for a World Series on a different team and then go out and test free agency again next year when you opt out of your 2-year deal again? Or 3-year deal with options in between each, like kind of what Cody Bellinger has? Yes. And that's why I think Blake Snell might be heading to Anaheim, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe it's a bold take, I don't know. But I think Blake Snell ends up in Anaheim. Pete Alonso. One of the best power bats in the league since he broke on. If you don't know what that photo is from, if you can't tell by the little postseason graphic, the German company, that was his home run that saved their season in the wild card round. And obviously, being like up the New York system, the Mets are obviously going to be on this list. And if you can't tell by how far over the Mets logo is, this is a very wide list. Let's say the Blue Jays don't get Walker. Why not add Pete Alonso? He would only be your DH power hitter or same role that Walker would fill at first if you want Vladdy to DH. It would be another power bat. It would lengthen your team. And it would just be another insurance policy behind Vlad. Now, another team that wants to spend on more lineup, the Seattle Mariners. Mariners are going to be linked to probably every single power hitter in this free agency. Now, they want to spend money and up the payroll, yes, but they're also going to have a lot of guys in that arbitration period. So it might be interesting when I do our trade chips talk, if they trade one of those young starters, or if they trade Luis Castillo since he's $20 million on the books. Another team we talked about that needs a first baseman, it's the Houston Astros. And Just like I said with the other first baseman on this top list, the Astros haven't really had a top first baseman. They tried with Jose Abreu, and it did not work out well. In fact, I would want to say it worked less than good. Very much less than good. So, if you're the Astros, I would be all over Pete Alonso right now. I would be on the phone with him actively, being like, how much do you want? What are you being told is going to be offered to you? And then I'd be matching that and going up more. Another team that I feel like, because Rizzo's gone now, New York Yankees. Is Ben Rice really your first baseman of the future? Is he? We've all seen clips of Judge picking it at first. No. He's too good of an outfielder to do that. Plus, you're the Yankees. You go out and get your first baseman, right? He would be a perfect fit in New York. Well, he already is in New York. And I think he's going to stay in New York. But I don't think he's going to stay with the Yankees. Because even though the Yankees could offer him a lot of money, the Mets have a lot more money to spend this offseason. Plus, he's been a Met for his whole career so far to this point. So give me the Mets to get Pete Alonso. Alex Bregman. If you would have told me in 2019 when he was going to eventually hit free agency that he'd get an absolute bag, I would have been like, absolutely. Now we look at Bregman, that slow start to the year. He ticked it up at the end. But what is his value right now? And especially when you look at markets like New York and LA, won't want him because of the history there. Right? The sign stealing thing that the Yankees are still mad about. The sign stealing that the Dodgers are still mad about. Because the Dodgers feel like they should have more than 2 rings over the 2010s into 2020s. They feel like they should have 3. They feel like they were in the running for the Red Sox one, right? So I don't see the New York and LA markets driving up the price. So it's kind of maybe high, like average annual salary, but shorter on the years, which I think works perfectly for what the Astros are going to have to do, because they still have to pay Kyle Tucker and a bunch of other pieces. Then, like I said earlier, there were rumors that he's willing to move to second base. Well, you wouldn't have to move him there if you sent him to the Blue Jays. If he goes to the Blue Jays, the same thing when I was talking about maybe Vlad goes to third, if they bring in Christian Walker or Pete Alonso. Well, he doesn't have to. He sticks at first. Boom, you got your third baseman right there. Another team that was interested when I saw the name linked, but I kind of agree. A lot of money came off the books with Patrick Corbin being gone. A lot of money. And when I'm looking at teams that could use a third baseman, do the Nationals have plenty of third base prospects on the way? 100%. But do they need to make a move that says, we're ready now? We want to win now. I believe they do. And so when we see all these young guys come up, like we saw James Wood, we saw Dylan Cruz, there's even more on the way. Go out and signal, we're starting now. We're ready to win now. Signal to the rest of the league in the NL, which is going to be a dumpster fire again all the way to the end, where it's going to be teams just grinding it through all the way to the end. It's going to be another juggernaut of an NL again. It signals that they're ready to go now. Maybe next free agency they go out again, and they go and get more pieces. Maybe they make some more big trades. I think Bregman would be a great fit. Another interesting fit would be Detroit that I saw linked. And this would all be if the markets didn't get drawn up that big. Now with the Javi Baez contract, it's going to be interesting because you want to really spend more money on kind of like a player that you have question marks on. Like you had question marks with Baez, you gave him a massive contract and then it didn't work out. It would be the exact same thing with Bregman, right? There's questions if offensively he'd be great. And he's a pull hitter that plays a Minute Maid. That's how you're going to get a lot of homers when you're pulling the ball as a right-handed hitter in a Minute Maid. Not the same thing with Comerica. Comerica is one of the deeper outfields in baseball. So you would see a lot of homers dry up. Would that scare away the Tigers? Right? Is there a fit? Yes. But is it reasonable? No. Especially because he's been there for a long time. I think the Astros get this deal done. Would it be interesting to see him play in Washington? Absolutely. I'd love to see him play in Washington. I think that would be great for what is this very young team. I just don't see the Astros really being like, we're letting you go. Maybe it's on a shorter term deal, but I think he returns. Another player that a lot of teams really want. We got, obviously, the O's are going to want him back for his services. One of the best switch hitters in the league. 40 plus bombs as a switch hitter. You can't turn away that. Kansas City Royals, like I said, they need some bats. And they need some bats bad. And I think he would be a great fit in that offense. The Yankees, again, if Soto leaves, they've already been linked. A couple teams have been linked. The Red Sox have also been linked to Santander. So, there's plenty of, there's going to be a market, especially in that NL East. Because apparently, almost all the teams except the Rays have already been linked to Santander. The Blue Jays have called. The Red Sox have called. The Yankees are in. And he's leaving the Orioles. So, he has a very vast market. But when I look at this team and what they did last year, they showed that they are aggressive. They're willing to spend money. And they still have a lot of money to go. Because I think ownership's going to be willing to spend. And I really want to go see the Royals make a shocking signing and go out and get a guy like Anthony Santander. When we look at the Brewers, we knew that they weren't going to bring him back, but they still have offered him. So, we're going to put him there. The Dodgers offered, yet I do not have them on this list, and the Mets have offered. The Mets offered $160 million, allegedly. Those teams are ones to keep an eye on. I just don't see him wanting to go to New York, because he said that he wants to stick it short, and they want to put him at third. Then the Yankees, does he stick it short? No. So those are two teams, the Dodgers. Does he stick it short? Maybe. Or are they giving it to Edman? There's chances for him to play. But is he going to at short? Maybe he doesn't want to move to third. Definitely probably not second if he doesn't want to move to third. So it might be lenient on wanting to go there. Giants have money. Giants have wanted to spend money for a while. Giants have been linked to every big free agent under the sun. I think there's a realistic chance he ends up there. And like I said with the Yankees, where would he play? Because Volpe's obviously the shortstop of the future. You're probably putting Jazz back at second. Does he want to go to third? And plus, he was a Ray at one point. So a lot of smaller market teams don't like the Yankees. He probably came up, and I don't know him personally. I haven't read a segment where he said he would never play for the Yankees. But that's just another thing to keep an eye on. Just would he want to go from small market to small market and be like, yeah, I'm going to the Yankees? Just by his play style, I don't think that's what he'd want to do. And then the Mariners, I have them linked there. J.P. Crawford is a great fielding second or shortstop. Maybe they sign him to second. Same thing. Maybe they keep J.P. at short and they put Willie at third. It's kind of the same Dodgers, Mets, Yankees situation. And that kind of leaves, if he really wants to play short, he goes to San Francisco. This is the second top free agent that I've given to San Francisco. And you're like, well, that Tyler Fitzgerald kid was really good for them last year. He was a really good bet. Is he a great fielding shortstop? Absolutely not. Would he maybe be better at second? Because he doesn't have that strong of an arm. So you move Fitz to second. You have Adames and Matt Chapman on that one side. That is an electric defensive side. Now to our top pitcher on the list. Corbin Burnes. They gave up I'm not going to say a haul. It was, at the time, a very interesting deal. Now, the Brewers did get some good pieces, and when you looked at it, he wasn't really happy with the team and was probably better than losing him in free agency. So, obviously, the O's are going to want to bring him back. Another team that wants to spend money, they need a little more help in the rotation. We saw it last year when they lost Kodai Senga, and they kind of had to rely on the two guys that they gave small contracts to, or short-term contracts that both opted out. So now you've got holes in the rotation. So Corbin Burnes, especially when we know the Mets want to spend a lot of money, they could go out and do it. Another team, right? Giants want to spend money. I know I have the Giants linked to everyone, but I think it's true. Giants say they want to go out and spend money. And can you imagine Logan Webb and Corbin Burnes in that same rotation with the rest of their young guys. We saw this team make a very interesting playoff run this year. Can you imagine if you paired Corbin Burnes with Tariq Skubal? Not saying it would happen, but this is a very interesting fit because it's a team that needs more starting pitching. Maybe they're willing to go big fish hunting. We don't know yet. I think this Baltimore ownership group, it's the new ownership group. They want to be aggressive and set a precedent when they have this very good, talented team that they're willing to make it better with spending money. And so I think Baltimore scoops him back up. Then when we look at our final free agent, one of the biggest free agents this year. Obviously, we got the New York Yankees. The Yankees love him there. If Brian Cashman does not bring him back, Brian Cashman would be public enemy number one in New York. And I don't know how many people want to be yelled at by New Yorkers with that hard accent, because quite frankly, they're scary. When Yankees fans are angry, they're quite scary. Another New York team, they want to spend money, they're linked. And before I started recording this, and it's currently Thursday at 5:42, Steve Cohen is going to be meeting with Juan Soto and Scott Boras. He is on a flight out to LA, which is apparently where Juan Soto has his little grounds at. So the Mets are also on this list. And I don't know if Juan Soto lives in LA. That was just my speculation on why they're meeting him there. Or maybe that's where Boras is meeting, like headquarters is. Or maybe it's because he's already met with an LA team. The Dodgers said that they had interest, and the Dodgers are going to say they have interest in everybody. All right. The Dodgers, would it really make the entire league angry if Soto went there? Absolutely. Because then it's just like, well, this team's winning the World Series in 20 consecutive years. But Dodgers aren't afraid to spend money. And they'll find a way to just defer a bunch of money forever if that means bringing in Juan Soto. The Blue Jays, like we saw with Ohtani last year, we thought he was heading to Toronto, and then we figured out he was not on that plane. It'll be interesting to see if Juan Soto is on a different plane, and this time he's heading somewhere else. So the Blue Jays, they've said they've wanted to spend money forever, and I think they do spend some money this offseason to help that lineup. Do I see them getting Juan Soto? Probably not. And then my final team, like I said, they want to spend money, and they want to spend a lot of money. It's the San Francisco Giants. I don't think the Giants end up, because they tried going after Judge. I don't think they get Soto either. I just think there's other teams that are going to be more aggressive. I think the Giants are going to be scared away by how much these other bigger market teams, because San Francisco is a big market, but I think these other teams just track up the price so much more. In the end, the Yankees next year are projected to have $224 million payroll already. Now, that is dropping from inside the 300s. That's still a lot of money. One team is dropping also from inside the 300s, but they are sitting at $160 million. Their owner is apparently meeting with them later this week, rather. Give me the New York Mets to go out and sign Juan Soto. I had Juan Soto in the photoshopped image in a Mets jersey on the profile, and I also did have Gleyber Torres, which we did not talk about, but when I do our trade chips and other landing spot things, when I go over the 3-sport preview, which is going to be probably an hour-and-a-half stream sometime next year, or next week, not next year. That would be way too late to do that, to keep talking about this free agency. But I'll talk about Gleyber Torres. I'll talk about the other outfielders. Does Jesse Winker have a market after the strong postseason? What does Jock Peterson get? What does guys like Sean Manaea get? We'll talk about all of them next week, unless they sign or take a qualifying offer or what have you. Like Nick Martinez plans to take a qualifying offer. That's at least what was reported by MLB Network. But so that's going to be all that I have for this week's rendition. This will probably be put out on Friday. So maybe some things change and we see some other guys pop up. But that's going to be all for this week for Carr Sports. I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in this week, and I'll be seeing you next week. Take it easy.